Welcome. This is part one of our Creating Great E-Learning. Some of the areas overlap between creating e-learning courses and face-to-face products, but for the purposes of this course we thought it would be much easier for us to separate out so that if you only wanted to do e-learning you could go to this section, and if you were quite interested in e-learning, again, you could just find your way to this section without having to do the rest. So this is it, Creating E-Learning Part 1. Despite the advances in e-learning, some of the e-learning products out there are definitely written for zombies. They're written for people to passively absorb the information, and they may as well have sent someone an e-book, because all the person has to do is read the screen. They don't have to do anything else. There's no interaction. They're not asked to do any exercises, and at the end of it there's usually a test which isn't about their level of understanding. It's mainly about, can you remember the screen before? So if you're going to create e-learning courses, we would say, remember you're doing it for humans. Think about using colour and film. Keep it to a manageable format. There's no point in creating an e-learning package which goes over 20 minutes to half an hour, because no one is going to sit still for that amount of time. And actually we shouldn't be encouraging people to sit still for that amount of time. At other places in this course you will see information about somatic learning, which is about moving around, and that's the standard we should be aiming for. You also need to apply learning theories to e-learning, so it's not separate to how human beings learn and what we know about learning theories. It should be integral to how we design e-learning, and key to doing it and making sure it works and making sure all the links are there and it doesn't crash is a lot of piloting and testing before actually rolling out. So when your client's asking you to put forward an e-learning package and they want it next week, you might agree to do that, but only on the agreement that next week will be the piloting phase and you would like it all tested. So our learning objectives are pretty much the same as face-to-face, other than it would be quite difficult to do any demonstrations. So if someone was following an active process of creating something or using a particular program, it would be quite difficult to have an objective in there that they would be able to do that, because we've got no way of assessing that. We're not with them at the time. It's also quite tricky, but not impossible, to do collaboration or joint working. If you have a Padlet, which is a joint information board, or if you set up a joint project, then you can definitely get joint working. Our experience is that clients don't want to pay for joint working or collaboration. We believe that the downside to e-learning is the isolation and the lack of motivation, because you're not collaborating with other people. But unfortunately, as we sit here today, what we would say to you is most clients are not that keen on paying for a collaborative or joint working initiative. Some of our keywords for our learning objectives include that someone can do something, they can know something, they can create something, or they can make a decision about something. More difficult ones to fulfill in terms of learning objectives are words such as believe and feel, because they're so personal, and I cannot guarantee that however good my course content is, I can make people believe or feel something. And that's one of the difficulties with training, that sometimes clients don't understand. There is a limit to how far we can change hearts and minds, but in terms of e-learning, those are the kind of words we might be putting in there. We need to set a criteria for success in our e-learning, so there has to be a form of evaluation, and e-learning allows us a range of ways that we can actually do that. So in a standard e-learning package on Articulate Storyline or Lectora, you might say that someone cannot complete the course until they have answered all of the answers 100% correctly or 75% correctly, so they cannot complete the course until they get it absolutely right. Health and safety courses tend to follow that remit, that they want a high level of passing. Unfortunately, this leaves a very frustrated feeling by the participant who's doing their best, and a lot of it is usually around trying to remember what the previous page said. So obviously that there should be some sort of testing and accreditation. There might be a pass or fail mark, or someone might have to complete a certain percentage of the course. Likewise, you can do timed scenarios where someone may have to do a drag and drop facility within a certain amount of time. So this will be a matching and a sorting activity, working out what goes where. But again, it's up to you to discuss with the client how you're going to evaluate, but also what is the criteria for success. When we're creating our e-learning, we need to check what resources we've got available, because the more resources we have available, the more fun we can make it. We can include games in our e-learning. We can include lots of virtual events, including exhibitions and conferences. We can have a lot of blended learning options where we might have a half-day workshop and then everything else will be online. We can provide an e-book. We can create films to illustrate a point so that someone doesn't have to sit there reading hundreds and hundreds of words. We can provide films or cartoons. We can set up collaborative communities, and we can certainly set up simulations, as long as we have the funding to do that. So we need to check with the client exactly how they're going to resource this, because if there is some money in there, you can quite easily commission a game if you go on Elance, or find an instructional designer in your local community who can create an online game or a virtual event which will add to the learning. In terms of activities, online there's really only 3 types of activities that we can add to the program. So these are do, absorb and connect, and we're going to spend some time going through those in a lot more depth so that you actually see how to create a great e-learning course. If we were going to create the ideal e-learning course, we would have these components in it. So first of all, we will be supporting our participants to actually learn. And in order to learn thoroughly and effectively, we would encourage them to practice what they've learned, to go and explore and find some more information and actually start discovering some additional facts for themselves. So that's what we're trying to create when we're trying to create an e-learning package, that we're not going to hand everything to someone on a plate and say, here it is, just feast away. What we're going to say is, here's 2/3 of a plate, but we'd like you to go and find some more information. And you will see we've fulfilled that in our course resources. We've asked you to go off and undertake certain tasks and activities, and that's in order for you to get the maximum learning potential from the course. So in order to get the greatest e-learning course, we want to encourage people to learn, practice, explore for themselves and discover even more information.